there are words in human history that do not simply rest upon a page but reverberate like echoes through time. Among them, the Egyptian term Ka hums with a resonance that is neither fully understood nor easily dismissed. It is not merely a relic of a dead language, nor a symbol trapped within brittle papyrus. It is a whisper of something timeless, a presence that reaches forward like a golden thread stretching across millennia, tugging us to remember. To speak of the Ka is to peel back the skin of ordinary existence and glimpse the hidden pulse beneath, the vital current of life that is said to dwell between flesh and eternity. And to awaken it, to deliberately call it forth from its slumber, is to step into a forbidden practice that hovers at the boundary between human daring and divine remembrance. The Egyptians, those architects of mystery who etched eternity into stone, carried within their temples the knowledge that life was never only about survival or toil. To them, existence was a layered tapestry, woven not only of what is seen but of what breathes invisibly within. The Ka was not simply a soul in the way modern speech limits the word. It was the vital essence, the twin made of spirit, the luminous double that both animated and transcended the body. To awaken it was no small task. It was not an act of mere belief, but a process that demanded discipline, devotion, and an almost dangerous intimacy with the unseen. This was why the practice was forbidden, not in the sense of cruel denial, but in recognition that not all flames can be safely handled, not all eyes are ready to look directly into the sun. Imagine life as a great river, moving endlessly, carrying you along whether or not you notice the current. Most people drift, tossed by eddies and shallow whirlpools, unaware of the vast force beneath the surface. But the Egyptians whispered of a hidden channel beneath the river, a secret passage where the waters moved with greater clarity and power. To enter that channel was to awaken the Ka. It was to step not only into the deeper current of life but to touch the eternal source from which the river itself was born. In this way, the practice of awakening the Ka was both profoundly practical and cosmically daring. It promised clarity in the midst of confusion, purpose in the midst of chaos, yet it also carried the potential to dissolve the fragile scaffolding of the ordinary self. This forbidden practice was wrapped in silence and symbol, because to speak of it directly was to reduce it, to flatten something vast into the cage of words. The Egyptians hid their truths in the curvature of hieroglyphs, in the silent architecture of pyramids aligned with the stars, in rituals that echoed the geometry of the cosmos. And so, to approach the Ka today is to listen between the lines of history, to decipher not only texts but the silence between them. It is to allow myth and metaphor to become guideposts, to let the forgotten rhythm of ancient thought beat again within one's chest. In our modern age, where the noise of machines and the chatter of endless information drown out the inner ear, the very idea of a Ka may seem quaint, even fanciful. Yet beneath the surface of all cultures lies the same intuition, that human beings are not confined to flesh, that there is a reservoir of life beyond the physical heartbeat. Some call it soul, some call it energy, some call it spirit. The Egyptians, with their precision and reverence, named it the Ka, and their rituals sought not merely to acknowledge it, but to awaken it, to cultivate a direct relationship with that vital twin. What they guarded was not simply a belief system, but a transformative technology of the self, a way to bridge the seen and unseen, the mortal and the divine. To awaken the Ka is to confront a paradox. On one hand, it is the most intimate journey possible, for it demands that one turn inward, peeling back the veils of distraction and desire to face the true essence that animates them. On the other hand, it is also the most expansive, because the Ka, once stirred, is said to tether one not only to one's own essence but to the greater web of existence, a cosmic lattice that holds all life. This paradox is why it was considered forbidden, why it was hidden from casual eyes. It is dangerous not in the sense of harm, but in the sense that it dissolves illusions, and illusions, once dissolved, cannot easily be rebuilt. Consider the metaphor of fire. To the uninitiated, fire is dangerous, a force that burns, consumes, and destroys. But to the one who learns its rhythm, who understands how to tend it, fire becomes light, warmth, and power. The Ka was seen in a similar way. To awaken it prematurely, without preparation, was to risk being burned by one's own inner radiance. But to awaken it with reverence and readiness was to kindle a flame that could guide the soul not only through life but beyond death itself. Thus, When we speak of Awaken the Ka, the forbidden Egyptian practice to activate your higher self, we are not merely dusting off an ancient curiosity. We are stepping into a continuum of human seeking, into a practice that demands we see ourselves as more than consumers, more than thinkers, more than bodies bound by clocks and calendars. We are stepping into a conversation with eternity. To awaken the Ka is not simply to believe in something ethereal, but to realign with the living current that underlies all reality, to let the inner twin rise and breathe beside us, guiding us into a higher octave of existence. And so, this exploration begins not as a scholarly treatise, nor as a simple historical recounting, but as an invitation. It is an invitation to listen with the heart as much as the mind, to let metaphor become map, to allow the language of the ancients to seep through the cracks of the modern world. It is a journey both inward and outward, an act of remembrance and renewal. To awaken the Ka is to awaken ourselves, not only to who we are, but to the vast, luminous being we might yet become. To understand the essence of Awaken the Ka, the forbidden Egyptian practice to activate your higher self, one must step beyond the surface of language and enter into the pulse beneath the words. For the Egyptians, existence was not flat but layered, composed of overlapping realities. The Ka was one of these realities, a vital double, a spirit breath that mirrored the physical self yet was not bound by its limitations. To speak of the Ka is to enter into the Egyptian cosmology of the self, where the human being is not a single, isolated entity, but a constellation of forces woven together. The practice of awakening the Ka was not merely about mystical curiosity, it was about reweaving one's life so that the mortal frame aligned with its eternal twin. At the heart of this practice lies the recognition that what we ordinarily perceive as reality is but a sliver of a far greater whole. The Egyptians knew that the senses deceive, that appearances mask the deeper essence. Life, for them, was a hall of mirrors, each reflection hinting at a truth beyond itself. The Ka was one of those hidden truths, invisible to ordinary sight yet more real than the body it animated. To awaken it was to pierce through the illusion, to step into a more authentic participation in existence. The first theme that emerges from this tradition is the idea of duality and reflection. The Ka was seen as a double, but not a mere copy. It was the living essence that animated form, the subtle current that made a body more than flesh. One could say the body was the lamp, and the Ka was the flame. Without the Ka, the lamp was only clay. And yet, most people identified themselves only with the clay, forgetting that their true vitality came from the hidden fire. The practice of awakening was therefore a call to remembrance, to re-identify not with the fragile shell but with the eternal flame within. Another guiding pillar is the relationship between the seen and the unseen, between the visible world and its invisible architecture. The Egyptians were master builders, not only of stone but of meaning. Their temples, their rituals, their myths were all scaffolding designed to mirror the deeper geometry of existence. To awaken the Ka was to recognize this geometry within oneself, to see that just as the pyramids pointed toward the stars, so too did the human being point toward eternity. This is why the practice cannot be reduced to mere ritual, it is a shift of perception, an alignment that allows the invisible to shine through the visible. The practice also carries with it the theme of vitality and immortality. The Ka was not a static essence but a dynamic one, a living current that could be strengthened, nourished, or neglected. Just as the body requires food, the Ka required offerings, not only material but energetic, symbolic, devotional. To awaken it was not to conjure something from nothing, but to feed and cultivate what was already present, to make the invisible double strong enough to walk beside the physical self. In this way, the Ka was the bridge between mortality and immortality, the aspect of self that continued beyond death. To awaken it during life was to prepare the soul for its journey, to ensure that one's essence was not a faint shadow but a radiant companion on the path beyond the grave. There is also the theme of forbidden knowledge, and with it, the cautionary undertone. Why was this practice hidden? Why was it forbidden to the uninitiated? The answer lies in the nature of transformation itself. To awaken the Ka is not a gentle pastime, not a casual meditation. It is to shift the very ground of one's being, to dissolve illusions that society relies upon for order. A person who awakens the Ka no longer fears death in the same way, no longer obeys the illusions of power or wealth with the same fervor. such a person is difficult to control, difficult to bind. And so, like fire, this knowledge was guarded, shared only with those prepared to bear its consequences. It was forbidden not out of cruelty, but out of recognition that not all souls are ready for such a flame. Finally, woven throughout these themes is the motif of ascent and alignment. The Egyptians aligned their monuments with the stars, believing that the human soul itself was a star incarnate. To awaken the Ka was to remember this stellar origin, to align one's essence with the cosmic order. It was not merely personal transformation but participation in the universal symphony. The awakened Ka was not a private possession but a tuning fork that resonated with the greater harmony of existence. In this sense, the practice was both deeply individual and profoundly cosmic. When all these themes are gathered together, duality, the seen and unseen, vitality and immortality, forbidden knowledge, ascent and alignment, they form a tapestry that invites us to rethink what it means to be human. The Ka is not simply a ghostly relic of an ancient belief system, it is a symbol and a reality pointing toward the higher self, the luminous double that each of us carries within. To awaken it is to re-enter the cosmic dance, to live not as a fragment but as a being aligned with the whole. This is why the practice continues to speak, even in our modern age. For though the language of hieroglyphs has been silenced, the longing of the human soul has not. We still yearn to remember, to awaken, to step beyond the narrow confines of flesh and clock time into something eternal. And the Ka, that ancient twin, waits patiently within, like a flame dormant in the wick, ready to blaze when the seeker is ready to strike the spark. To understand the Ka through concepts alone is to hold a map without ever walking the terrain. The Egyptians knew that truth was not best preserved in abstract statements but in stories, in symbols, in myths that carried the resonance of many meanings at once. Their tales were not entertainment but vessels, carefully crafted to guide the mind past its boundaries, to awaken the inner ear to the whispers of the unseen. To approach the Ka through these symbolic narratives is to step into a theater where gods and mortals mingle, where every image is both literal and allegorical, where truth shimmers just beyond the surface of words. One such narrative emerges from the tale of the sun god Ra, who each night journeyed through the underworld. By day, Ra was the blazing sun, the life-giver, the force that illuminated the world. By night, he descended into darkness, battling serpents and shadows, until he rose again at dawn, renewed. This daily cycle mirrored the human journey, for within each person there is a light that shines through the waking hours, only to descend into darkness, doubt, or death. The Ka, in this narrative, is the hidden companion that ensures renewal. Just as Ra never truly perished but carried his essence through the night, so too does the Ka carry the individual's essence through shadow, ensuring that light rises again. To awaken the Ka is to recognize oneself in Ra's journey, to trust that the inner flame can endure any descent. Another powerful symbol arises in the myth of Osiris, the king who was dismembered and resurrected. Osiris's body was torn apart by his jealous brother Set, scattered across the land. Yet through the devotion of Isis, the pieces were gathered, reassembled, and infused with life once more. In this myth, the Ka can be seen as the glue of wholeness, the subtle thread that weaves the scattered fragments of self into a unified being. To live without awakening the Ka is to remain like Osiris dismembered, fragments of desire, thought, and fear, scattered across the fields of experience. But to awaken it is to become whole again, to allow the higher essence to weave the fragments into a living unity. The forbidden practice was, in essence, the resurrection of Osiris within each seeker, the reanimation of one's inner double. Consider also the symbol of the pyramid itself. To the casual eye, it is a monument of stone, a tomb for kings. But to the symbolic imagination, the pyramid is a diagram of ascent. Its base is wide, rooted in the earth, representing the physical life of matter, body, and survival. As one climbs upward, the structure narrows, the levels become more refined, until finally it converges at the point, the apex, which touches the sky. The Ka is that apex within us, the place where the earthly self converges with the divine. To awaken it is to climb the pyramid within, to rise from the broad concerns of daily existence toward the sharp clarity of higher essence. This ascent is not physical but inward, not about bricks and stone but about consciousness aligning with its eternal twin. The Egyptians also left us the image of the weighing of the heart, where the soul of the deceased was measured against the feather of Ma'at, the principle of truth and cosmic order. In this image, the Ka plays a subtle role, for it is the Ka that carries the essence of one's life, the invisible twin that records whether one has lived in alignment with truth or in distortion. If the heart is heavy, weighed down by illusions and betrayals of the higher self, the Ka is weak, unable to ascend. But if the heart is light, in harmony with Ma'at, the Ka rises like a bird, carrying the essence into eternity. Thus, the awakening of the Ka during life is preparation for this weighing, a practice of lightening the heart, shedding illusions, and aligning with truth. Yet perhaps the most poignant symbol of the Ka is the image of the twin shadow. In Egyptian art, figures are often depicted not alone but accompanied by a double, faintly drawn beside them. This was not artistic flourish but a spiritual recognition, that each human walks with an invisible companion, a reflection not of shadow but of light. The twin shadow reminds us that we are never alone, that our true essence hovers just beside us, waiting to be acknowledged. To awaken the Ka is to turn to this twin, to recognize its presence, to walk in conscious partnership with it. This image dissolves the illusion of isolation, replacing it with a sense of companionship that is both intimate and eternal. What makes these narratives so powerful is their multiplicity. Each symbol, the sun's journey, Osiris's resurrection, the pyramid, the weighing of the heart, the twin shadow, functions on many levels. They speak of cosmic processes, of mythic truths, but they also speak directly to the human heart. They tell us that within our struggles, our descents, our scatterings, and our doubts, there is always a hidden twin, a Ka that endures. They remind us that we are not merely victims of time but participants in eternity, not isolated bodies but luminous beings with doubles that stretch into the infinite. To explore these narratives is to allow myth to become mirror. For in hearing Ra's descent, one sees their own nights of darkness. In watching Osiris reassembled, one feels the longing to gather the scattered fragments of one's own soul. In gazing at the pyramid, one recognizes the longing to ascend beyond the clutter of daily life. And in contemplating the twin shadow, one begins to sense the Ka itself, hovering just beyond the reach of the senses, waiting to be awakened. These symbolic narratives do not demand belief in a literal sense. They demand something more difficult, participation. They ask the seeker to enter the story, to let it unfold within their own being, to recognize that mythology is not about distant gods but about the architecture of the human soul. To awaken the Ka is to realize that these stories are not about someone else, not about some distant past, but about the eternal drama being enacted within one's own heart. The challenge with subjects like the Ka is that they often remain suspended in the air, hovering like incense smoke in a temple, fragrant and mysterious yet intangible. Myth and metaphor stir the heart, but unless they sink into life, unless they become embodied, they risk remaining as dreams without consequence. The Egyptians did not craft their wisdom only to decorate tombs or dazzle posterity, they meant it to guide living beings into fuller participation with existence. Awakening the Ka, then, is not a museum artifact, it is a living possibility. The question becomes, how does such a profound, almost cosmic practice take root in the soil of everyday life? The first step is recognition. To live as if one is only flesh, only a bundle of tasks and routines, is to fall asleep at the very moment one was born to awaken. Recognition is like the striking of flint against stone, the moment the spark leaps out. One does not need to sit in a temple to feel it, one need only pause in the middle of an ordinary day and remember that there is a twin, a silent flame within, a Ka waiting just beyond the senses. This remembrance shifts how one walks, how one speaks, how one regards even the smallest of encounters. Suddenly, the mundane becomes infused with presence, as though the hidden double is watching alongside you, nudging you to live not as a shadow but as a bearer of light. Integration also requires nourishment. Just as the Egyptians offered food and libations to sustain the Ka of their ancestors, so too must we feed our own living essence. But this nourishment is not merely material, it is the quality of our thoughts, the alignment of our actions, the devotion of our attention. Each time we act in harmony with truth, we strengthen the Ka. Each time we pause to breathe with awareness, to align intention with action, we offer sustenance to that invisible twin. Conversely, when we live in dishonesty, distraction, or neglect, we starve it. Modern life, with its constant fragmentation, has left many people with weak Kas, doubles that flicker faintly, underfed by the scraps of shallow attention. To awaken the Ka is to consciously choose what to feed it, to recognize that every choice, every word, is an offering. In practical terms, this practice reshapes relationships. When one walks with the Ka awake, interactions no longer remain on the surface. The invisible double perceives beyond the masks people wear, sensing the essence beneath appearances. Suddenly, compassion becomes more natural, because one sees the Ka in others, their hidden flame flickering even when their words or actions stumble. Conflict, too, takes on a different hue, for to harm another is to dim their Ka, and to awaken one's own is to desire not harm but illumination. This does not make one naive or passive, rather, it cultivates discernment, the ability to see when another is aligned with their essence or when they are lost in illusion. Relationships become not transactions but mirrors, opportunities to strengthen the living flame both within oneself and in others. The awakening of the Ka also alters one's relationship with time. The ordinary mind is shackled by the ticking of clocks, forever measuring life in days, deadlines, and dwindling hours. But the Ka belongs to a different order, it is not bound by the linear march of minutes but resonates with the cyclical rhythms of eternity. When one begins to live from the Ka, time loosens its grip. Moments stretch open, revealing a depth that clocks cannot measure. This shift does not erase responsibilities or schedules, but it infuses them with spaciousness, reminding us that eternity pulses within even the most fleeting instant. To awaken the Ka is to live in two times at once, the time of the body and the time of the eternal double. Practical integration also carries real-world consequences for how one navigates power, success, and failure. In societies ancient and modern, people chase symbols of power, wealth, status, possessions, believing these to be the measure of life. But the Ka recognizes a different currency. It thrives not on accumulation but on alignment. The more one awakens the Ka, the less one is seduced by false idols. Success becomes measured not by what one owns but by how deeply one lives in harmony with truth. Failure, too, is transformed, for even in loss or disappointment, the Ka can grow stronger if one meets these moments with awareness. This is why those who awaken their Ka are difficult to control. They no longer live in fear of losing what was never truly theirs, nor do they measure themselves by illusions that dissolve with time. In modern contexts, this awakening also reshapes our engagement with collective crises. The world today groans under the weight of ecological destruction, social fragmentation, spiritual hunger. Many approach these issues only through external solutions, new technologies, policies, or systems. While these are important, the Egyptians remind us that the external world mirrors the internal. A civilization whose people have forgotten their Kas cannot help but build systems of disconnection. To awaken the Ka is therefore not a private luxury but a collective necessity. Each awakened being contributes to a web of resonance, a network of living doubles that strengthens the whole. In this way, the practice offers not only personal transformation but societal renewal, for the world reshapes itself when its people live from essence rather than illusion. Finally, the practical implications touch the ultimate horizon, death itself. For many, death is a terror, the great unknown, the dissolution of all meaning. But for the Egyptians, it was not an end but a passage, a movement from one chamber of existence into another. The Ka was the companion that ensured safe passage, the twin that carried the essence beyond the threshold. To awaken the Ka during life is to prepare for that passage, to walk into death not with fear but with recognition. It is to live in such a way that when the heart is weighed, it rises light as a feather, carried by the strength of the awakened double. In this sense, practical integration is not only about how one lives but about how one dies, and how, through the Ka, life itself continues beyond death's door. The forbidden Egyptian practice, then, is not about retreating into esoteric fantasy but about reawakening the most practical truth, that we are more than what we seem, that life is more than its surfaces, that every breath can be an offering to the double that walks beside us. To live with an awakened Ka is to walk with fire in the heart, clarity in the mind, and eternity at one's side. It is to live as the Egyptians intended, not as fragments, but as luminous beings aligned with the rhythm of the cosmos. As we arrive at the final movement of this exploration, the Ka stands before us not as a distant curiosity sealed in the tombs of pharaohs, nor as a mere relic of hieroglyphs etched into stone, but as a living invitation, an eternal companion waiting to be recognized. The Egyptians, with their precision and reverence, were not obsessed with death as some modern interpreters imagine. They were obsessed with continuity, with the passage of life into deeper life, with the remembrance that existence stretches beyond the fragile horizon of the flesh. The Ka was their answer to that longing, their bridge between mortal breath and cosmic eternity. To awaken the Ka is to step into a transformation that defies easy language. It is not a formula to be mastered, not a superstition to be entertained, but a calling that reshapes the very axis of one's being. The forbidden nature of the practice was never about denial, it was about reverence. It was forbidden to those who sought it out of curiosity or power, those who wished to grasp the eternal as though it were another possession. For the Ka cannot be possessed. It can only be remembered, honored, awakened. And once it is awakened, life itself cannot remain the same. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast desert. Before you lies the horizon, shimmering with heat, stretching endlessly. Behind you are the walls of the city, the familiar rhythms of commerce, obligation, distraction. Most people remain behind those walls, content with the known, fearful of the desert's silence. But to awaken the Ka is to step into that silence, to walk into the desert where the stars reveal themselves more clearly, where the winds carry whispers of eternity. It is not an abandonment of the world but a deeper entry into it, for when you return from the desert, you see the city differently. The illusions no longer bind you, the noise no longer deafens you. You carry within you the vastness you touched, and every street becomes a temple, every encounter a ritual, every breath a hymn. The transformational call of the Ka is therefore both intimate and universal. Intimate, because it demands that each seeker confront themselves, their fears, their illusions, their scattered fragments. There is no awakening of the Ka without this inner reckoning. One must descend like Ra into the underworld, one must be scattered like Osiris and then reassembled, one must climb the inner pyramid step by step. But it is also universal, because each awakening resonates outward, like a ripple spreading across the waters of existence. One awakened Ka strengthens another, and together they weave a net of light across the darkness of the age. This is why the Egyptians preserved the practice, why they guarded it so carefully. It was not only for the salvation of the individual but for the renewal of the world. In practical terms, this call asks for remembrance. Not a fleeting moment of inspiration, but a daily practice of alignment. To awaken the Ka is to live as though every moment matters, because every moment does. It is to offer the flame within the nourishment it requires, honesty, awareness, devotion, love. It is to treat each interaction as a mirror, each choice as an offering, each breath as a sacred act. It is to recognize that while the body will pass, the Ka endures, and to live in such a way that the twin within grows radiant, strong, prepared to guide you beyond the final threshold. And so the forbidden practice reveals itself not as a relic of the past, but as a necessity of the present. In an age where distraction has become epidemic, where souls starve for meaning, where civilizations groan under the weight of disconnection, the awakening of the Ka is a medicine, a fire that burns away illusion and restores clarity. It calls us back to the essence of being human, not consumers, not automatons, but luminous beings woven into the rhythm of the cosmos. To awaken the Ka is to remember who we truly are, and in doing so, to reshape the world we inhabit. The journey is not without cost. To awaken the Ka is to let go of illusions that once seemed dear, to release identities that were never truly yours, to step into a freedom that can feel both exhilarating and terrifying. But this cost is also the gift, for in shedding the false, one gains the true. In letting go of what was never real, one awakens to what cannot be destroyed. The Ka is not a concept to be studied but a presence to be lived, a twin that walks beside you, whispering, waiting, ready to carry you into deeper life. The call, then, is simple yet profound: awaken. Do not sleep through the miracle of existence. Do not let the flame within starve for lack of attention. Do not fear the silence of the desert or the shadows of the underworld, for they are only thresholds, passages into greater light. Awaken the Ka, and you awaken yourself. Awaken yourself, and you awaken the world. This is the forbidden practice, and yet it is the most natural of all practices, to remember that you are more than flesh, more than thought, more than time. You are a being of light walking with a twin of eternity. To awaken the Ka is to live from that truth, to breathe it, to embody it, to carry it forward into life and beyond death. And in that awakening, life ceases to be a fleeting shadow, it becomes the very flame that no darkness can extinguish.